Sir, you have a record.
Thank you, Ed. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Municipal Court. I had everyone brought in and sort of en masse so that I could try to make this efficient for everybody, including the defendants, and not have to repeat myself over and over through 35 cases. So what I wanted to do is explain a few things to everyone, and then we're going to call the cases one at a time, and hopefully that'll be a bit more efficient. But the court needs to know who's here and who might have failed to appear in case I need to issue any arrest warrants for failure to appear. So I'm going to sort of call the roll. When I call your name, if you're here, if you could just raise your hand, indicate you're here. That way I'll know you've actually shown up. 22 TRD 7945, State versus Levi Gingrich. Thank you, Mr. Gingrich. 22 TRD 7940, State versus Mosey Gingrich. Thank you, Mr. Gingrich. 23 TRD 1245, 22 TRD 7832, State versus Mose Glick. Thank you, Mr. Glick. 22 TRD 7649, State versus Andy Hershberger. Thank you, Mr. Hershberger. 22 TRD 8204, 22 TRD 8341, State versus Elmer Hershberger. Thank you, Mr. Hershberger. 22 TRD 7647, State versus Levi Hershberger. Thank you, Mr. Hershberger. State versus 22 TRD 7652 and 22 TRD 7554, State versus Levi Hostetler. Thank you, Mr. Hostetler. 22 TRD 7950, State versus Levi Hostetler. Thank you, sir.
Which one?
Well, that's a good question. I've got two. The one that lives on Township Road 902. You both do. All right. How about 331 and a half Township Road 902? All right. Thank you, sir. I take it that you're the other Levi Hostetler, which is case number 22 TRD 7830, 22 TRD 8027. 23 TRD 721, 22 TRD 7719, State versus Levi Layman. Thank you, sir. 22 TRD 8819, State versus, is it Malin Layman? Malin Layman? Okay, thank you. 22 TRD 7368, State versus Elon Mast. Thank you. 22 TRD 7567, State versus Andy Miller. Right, thank you. 22 TRD 8354, State versus Enos Miller. Thank you. 22 TRD 7328, State versus Eli Swartzentruber. Thank you, sir. 22 TRD 8069, State versus Henry Swartzentruber. Thank you. 22 TRD 8546, State versus the other Henry Swartzentruber. Thank you. 22 TRD 7577, State versus Jacob Swartzentruber. Thank you. 22 TRD 7972, 23 TRD 202, both Captain State versus Benjamin Weaver. Thank you, sir. 22 TRD 7854, State versus Henry Weaver. Thank you, sir. 22 TRD 7941, State versus Abraham Yoder. Thank you, Mr. Yoder. 22 TRD 8206, State versus Levi Yoder. Thank you. State versus 22 TRD 8201, State versus Levi Yoder. Thank you, sir. 22 TRD 7656, 22 TRD 7750, and 22 TRD 8314, State versus Andy Zook. Thank you, Mr. Zook. 22 TRD 7957, State versus Daniel Zook. Thank you, sir. And finally, 22 TRD 7576, State versus Williamsville. Thank you. Everyone has Peter, which does not surprise me. Now, the purpose of this hearing, and I know that all of you have been here before, some of you multiple times, charged with violating Ohio's new statute that requires all horse-drawn or other animal-drawn vehicles to be equipped with a flashing yellow light whenever they go onto a public road, regardless of the time of day. You've come into court, most of you, if not all of you, have pled no contest, you've been found guilty, court has assessed a fine, and you are here today because you have not paid your fines and have not paid your court costs. Now, court doesn't exist in a vacuum, and I'm aware of the fact that many of the members of our local Amish community have religious objections to the statute. And I'm aware of the fact that there's pressure exerted by the bishops against the payment of these fines. And it may well be that all of you are refusing to pay your fines, and that all of you have the ability to pay your fines and are simply refusing to do so. But I don't know that, and I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. The law requires me to conduct hearings. When a person doesn't pay their fines, the court has to conduct a hearing to decide whether the person has the ability to pay, and they are just simply refusing to pay. That's what the court's required to do under Section 2947.14 of the Code. I have to decide, is this person refusing to pay their fine when they have the ability to pay, or are they simply unable to pay? Under Ohio law, if a person has the ability to pay their fines and they simply refuse, it is possible that that person could be incarcerated to sit their fines out at the rate of $50 per day in the Ashland County Jail. Now, the court is not permitted to order someone incarcerated to sit their fines out without conducting a formal hearing in each case, looking at the person's income, their living expenses, and evaluating whether or not they have the actual ability to pay their fines. If I find that they do, and they're simply refusing to do so, then under the statute, under certain circumstances, that person can be incarcerated for non-payment. That is only for fines. A person cannot be incarcerated under Ohio law for non-payment of court costs. Court costs are considered civil in nature. So if a person hasn't paid their fines and costs, they possibly could be incarcerated for non-payment of fines, but the court would have to pursue collection of the court costs as a civil matter. It's considered a civil matter. Now, you've all been summoned here because of the non-payment, and I'm going to call your cases forward one at a time and inquire as to whether or not you are refusing to pay your fines. And if you are, then I have to decide what I'm going to do with it. Now, I would tell you this. The jail is quite full. It's full of people that commit domestic violence. It's full of drunk drivers. It's full of thieves and drug addicts. I don't really have a lot of space for people that don't want to put lights on their buggies. And there is a very real, and I'm just going to be honest with you, there is a very real question under Ohio law whether a person can be incarcerated for not paying a fine on a minor misdemeanor. And one of the reasons, and that's what these are minor misdemeanors. They are not jailable offenses. And one of the reasons I've taken my time in trying to figure out how I want to handle these cases is that I wanted to research it and make sure that the court is following the law correctly. I also wanted to give all of you some time in the hopes that you would pay your fines. And many members of the Amish community have. Many members of the Amish community have paid their fines. Now, the question is, what's the court going to do with everyone who doesn't? And one of the problems with the idea of incarcerating people who don't pay their fines in buggy-like cases is obviously logistically. We don't really have the room at the county jail for 97 inmates on minor misdemeanors. That doesn't mean I won't do it. I will do it. If it can legally be done, it may take months, but we will schedule it and we'll do what we have to do to get it done. Another problem with that approach is it doesn't get the fines paid. And I know that a vast majority of you, just based on statements you've made to me when you've been in here, would welcome the opportunity to go to jail. I would be surprised if every single one of you wouldn't rather go to jail than pay your fines. Because that allows you to keep your faith, it allows you to stay out of trouble with the bishop, and you avoid paying the fine. And it accomplishes absolutely nothing from the state's perspective. It doesn't cause anybody to put a light on their buggy. It doesn't get any of the fines paid. So I'm not a huge fan of that option. The bigger problem is I don't believe that option really exists in these cases. So you're probably going to be disappointed in that the court is not going to give you the option of just going to jail for a couple of days and getting out of your fines. I don't believe that that's available to the court in light of the Ohio Supreme Court's decision in Statman versus Cincinnati, where the Ohio Supreme Court basically held that a person cannot be incarcerated for non-payment of fines unless the original case carried the possibility of a jail sentence. And because the minor misdemeanor buggy-like charge doesn't carry a jail sentence, incarcerating you for non-payment of the fine in that type of case is arguably a violation of your rights under the 14th Amendment because the underlying charge is not a jailable charge. So that's the issue the court has. You know, the knee-jerk reaction is just put them all in jail. I'm sure that the community would like that, and I'm sure all of you would probably like that. But I don't believe legally that's an option the court has. So, what options do I have? I could put warrant blocks, and when people don't pay their fines or minor misdemeanors, I could put warrant blocks on their driver's licenses. I'm sure none of you care about that. I could send your fines out to collections. I doubt many of you would care about that. Another option the court has is I could just keep having these hearings. And I could just bring you back every 30 days and keep having these hearings until someone blinks and either the court gets tired of it or you pay your fines. The fourth option, though, is the court could reduce your fines and your court costs to a judgment. That is an option that I have. Failure to pay your fines could be reduced to a judgment. Failure to pay your court costs could be reduced to a judgment. If I reduce your fines and costs to a judgment, then that judgment could be placed as a lien on real estate that you own in Ashland County or any other county. And I suspect most of you probably would care about that. And what that would do, first of all, it creates a tremendous amount of work for my staff and for the law director's office and the clerk of courts. But what that would do is it would guarantee that the fines and costs would eventually get collected. They would get collected when there's a transfer of the farm or part of it, or when there's an estate or sale. So that's an option that's very attractive to the court, and I've decided I'm going to pursue it. And that's one of the reasons that I brought you in here. I'm sure you don't want me to do that. I don't really want to do that either. But the court cannot simply allow a group of people to refuse to pay their fines. I can't do it. And if I do it, and I don't take any action about it, then there's no reason for anybody to pay their fines. So I feel like none of the defendants in any of these cases has raised a constitutional objection to this statute. None of you has filed a motion to dismiss. None of you has come in and said this is unconstitutional, it violates my religious freedom. You've all come in and said no contest. And as a result of that, you've been found guilty. That leaves me in a position where I have to impose a penalty. I've done that. I've tried to be reasonable in it. I've tried to be patient. But now it's to the point where you have pushed the court up against a wall to where I have to decide that I'm either going to let this go or I'm going to do everything in my power to collect the fines and costs like I would in any other case involving any other citizen of Ashland County. And that's the option the court's going to choose. So What we're going to do here today, we're going to call the cases one at a time. If the fines are not paid, I'm going to give each of you some forms to fill out. I'm going to order that you provide to the court all your financial information, tax returns, evaluations of your property, names and addresses of real estate, living expenses, all income sources, W-2s, 1099s. And then we're going to come back for hearings one at a time. And if your fines and costs are not paid at that hearing, I'm going to reduce the fines and costs of judgments, and we're going to put liens on real estate. Now, if anyone would like to satisfy their fines by doing community work service, or satisfy their court costs by doing community work service, if that is more acceptable to you in terms of your faith, the court is absolutely open to that. We have things that can be done. I don't care how you satisfy your fines and costs. If you want to do work service to do your fines and costs, I will hook you up with Mr. Fulmer today. He'd be happy to have you, and you can get started doing your work service. But if, by this imposition hearing, the hearing the court's going to conduct under 2947-14, if by that hearing, when you come back with all your financial information, if your fines are not paid, and I find you have the ability to pay, I'm going to probably reduce your fines and costs of judgments and do your liens. If you sign up to do community work service before then, even the day before, or you pay your fines even the day before, I will not do that. Now, I wanted to bring everybody in at once to get that out there, just in the interest of efficiency. And we're going to call your cases one at a time, and the court will be happy to answer any questions anybody has at that point. Mr. Crossan, would you clear the courtroom, please, and then we'll bring the defendants back one at a time?
Yes, sir.
If you all just wait out in the lobby, the spectators are welcome to stay. But if the defendants just want to wait out in the lobby, Mr. Crossan's going to call you back one at a time.
All rise, please. You have the record, sir.
Thank you. Court's going to call 22 TRD 7945 State versus Levi P. Gingrich. Go out. You want to fetch him, Mr.
Yes, sir.
Levi P. Gingrich.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gingrich. Mr. Gingrich, you were found guilty in this court back on November 15th of last year of a violation of the new buggy light statute. The court assessed a fine of $50. There have been no payments on the fine. Do you intend to pay it, Mr. Gingrich?
Not for religious reasons.
I'm sorry?
I do not for religious reasons.
Mr. Gingrich, do you have the financial ability to pay it?
Yeah, I would.
Mr. Stewart, could you give me a hearing and a contested slide on imposition of judgment? Approximately 30 days.
We can set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 1:15.
1:15 p.m. on May 15th, Mr. Gingrich, the court's going to conduct a hearing on the imposition of the judgment with respect to fines and costs against any real estate that you may have now or in the future in Ashland County. I am finding, based on your statement here today, that you do have the ability to pay your fines and you're simply refusing to do so. I would advise you, Mr. Gingrich, that you have the right to present evidence at that hearing that I'm going to have on May 15th. And you have the right to call witnesses, you have the right to subpoena witnesses, You have the right to present any evidence you want to present about your ability to pay your fines and costs. You have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing as well. Do you understand those essential rights? What was the time on that?
1:15, Your Honor.
Now, if you change your mind, Mr. Gingrich, you decide to pay your fines, you're certainly welcome to do that right up until 1:15 on May the 15th. If you'd like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing some community work service, the court would be very happy with that. And if you want to do that, you can stop over and see Mr. Fulmer in the probation department. He'll get you signed up for some community work service. Do you have any questions, Al?
What would community work service be?
Well, it could be a lot of things. We have a lot of different organizations that let us send people to them. Sometimes it involves maintenance on property. Sometimes it involves cleaning up an area. Very often, some of our people will go work at the city garage or clean trucks. We've had small carpentry projects. Right now, we're doing some work with the Park District, so there's an opportunity to plant trees, things like that. There are many different opportunities for community work service. Maintenance of some of the township cemeteries, we work on that. A lot of different options. Is that something you're interested in?
I'd like to think about it.
You think about it, and if you decide you want to do it, contact Mr. Fulmer, and we'd be happy to have you. Now, if you sign up for the work service program before that hearing, I'm going to cancel it. Do we have apparently we lost our bit of. Mr. Shaw, can you help me for a minute? Can you make me a copy of this for Mr. Gingrich? We're going to give you a copy of the court's order in this case, and also a notice of the next hearing. What's that?
They can make a copy of that.
Okay. All right. Do you have cards for Bob Fulmer?
I do, sir.
Can you give Mr. Gingrich one, please? Just copy for you, Mr. Gingrich. We'll see you back here in May unless your fines are paid or you sign up for the work service program. Have a good day. Mr. Kraussman, 22 TRD 7940, State versus Mosey Gingrich. Put that back to some reason. Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Gingrich. Mr. Gingrich, you were here back in November 7th of last year, pled no contest to a violation of 4513.141, which is the new buggy light statute. Court assessed a fine of $50 plus cost. Fine's not been paid. We had a fines and costs hearing in January. Court then set it out for today. Fines have still not been paid. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Gingrich?
No.
Do you have the ability to do so?
Religious reasons.
Are you financially able to pay your fines?
Well, if it's not a religious reason, I can't pay.
I understand the basis of your refusal, but my question is, do you have the financial capability to pay your fines if you didn't have a religious objection? Are you able to pay your fine?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. And you're just refusing to do so for religious reasons?
Yeah.
All right, based on that information, the court is going to find the defendant's failed to pay his fines and costs. He has the ability to do so by his own admission, and he's simply refusing to do so. Can we set this for hearing on imposition of judgment, please?
Set that for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 1 p.m.
Mr. Gingrich, the court's going to conduct a hearing on May the 16th at 1 o'clock on whether or not I should issue a judgment to the city of Ashland for your fines and costs. If I do that, that judgment can then be recorded as a lien against any real estate that you might own in Ashland or any real estate that you might own in the future. If you pay your fines and costs before that hearing, I will cancel the hearing and there will not be a judgment lien. If you would like the opportunity to do some community work service to satisfy your fines and costs, you're absolutely welcome to do that. The court would be very happy with that. If that's something that's more acceptable to you, I would give that opportunity to anybody. Mr. Krauser is going to give you a card for Mr. Fulmer. He runs the work service program. I'd like you to consider that option. If you decide that you want to do the work service, just get a hold of Mr. Fulmer and he'll get you signed up. If you do that before May the 16th, there will not be a judgment. Otherwise, we're going to have a hearing. Now, you have rights at that hearing. You have the right to be here. In fact, your appearance is mandatory. You have the right to present evidence regarding the ability to pay. You have the right to be represented by an attorney if you wish. Questions on any of that? All right, stop and see the clerk. They will give you a copy of that order, and we'll see you back here on the 16th if your fines aren't paid. Court's going to call 23 TRD 1245, 22 TRD 7832, State versus Mose Glick. Mose. Good afternoon, Mr. Glick. Mr. Glick, you've been here twice, February 16th of 2023 and also November 7th of 2022. Both times charged with failure to have a yellow flashing light on the top of a horse-drawn vehicle on a public road. Both times you said no contest and were found guilty. Court assessed a $50 fine on the first offense, $100 fine on the second. Neither of them have seen any payments. You were here for a fines and costs hearing back on January 26th. Basically, at this point, you've had 2.5 more months to pay your fines and haven't done so. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Glick?
No.
Do you have the ability to do so financially?
No, I guess not.
You do not have the financial ability to pay your fines? All right. You're not employed, Mr. Glick? You're not employed?
Yeah.
So what do you do?
Carpenter.
Okay. All right, Mr. Glick. Court's going to conduct a hearing under 2947.14 of the code to determine whether or not you have the ability to pay your fines.
Set that for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 1 p.m.
At that time, Mr. Glick, you're going to have to produce some financial information for the court so that I can decide if you have the ability to pay. It's going to be in the order of the court that you, at that next hearing, bring copies of any of these documents that you may have. 4 most recent pay stubs, copies of your most recent W-2 form from the IRS, copies of your most recent state and federal income tax returns, whatever year that might be, as well as a completed affidavit of income and expenses, which Mr. Crossman is going to provide to you, an indigence affidavit. You'll need to fill out that affidavit as well as bring in those other documents. Mr. Crossman, if you could please have him sign this order. Now, at this next hearing, Mr. Glick, obviously you have rights. You have the right to be here. You have the right to present evidence regarding your financial ability to pay the fines, including witnesses if you wish. You also have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing.
Need your signature here.
Do you understand those rights, Mr. Glick? Mr. Glick, did you understand the rights I just explained to you?
I think so.
All right. Do you have any questions that you want to ask?
No.
All right, do you understand the documents you need to bring back for me when you come? I need to see proof of your income, proof of your living expenses. Everyone that lives in your household, you need to fill that form out. And then I'm going to have a hearing to decide whether or not you can afford to pay your fines. Stop out and see the clerk. They will give you copies of the court's other orders. Good luck, Mr. 22 TRD 7649 State versus Andy Hershberger. Good afternoon, Mr. Hershberger. Mr. Hershberger, you were here, says back on October 28th of last year, charged with not having a flashing light on a horse-drawn vehicle. You pled no contest, you were found guilty. Court assessed a $50 fine. Looks like we had a fines and costs hearing on January 26th, but no payments have been made on your fines and costs to date, and it's been 5 months. You plan on paying your fines, Mr. Hershberger? Do you have the ability to pay your fines?
Yes.
You're just refusing to do so? All right. Court's going to find, based on Mr. Hershberger's statements, that he has the ability to pay his fines and he's refusing to do so. Court's going to conduct a hearing on imposition of judgment for fines and costs, approximately 30 days. Mrs. Dillon?
Set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 1:45 p.m.
1:45 on May the 15th, we'll have a hearing. Now, I would just say, Mr. Hershberger, it's my intention, if your fines are still not paid on that day, that I'm going to give a judgment to the city for unpaid fines and costs, which could then be placed as a lien on any real estate that you may own now or in the future. So, if you don't want that to happen, you've got until then to take care of your fines. You can pay them. If you are uncomfortable paying them for religious reasons or whatever, you are welcome to satisfy them by doing some community work service. If you would like to explore that option, Mr. Crossman is going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. Mr. Fulmer runs the work service program, and I'm sure he would be happy to have you. If you stop out and see the clerk before you go, Mr. Hershberger, they will give you a copy of the court's order in this case, and that will include notice of the judgment hearing date, which is, again, May the 15th at 1:45. Do you have any questions, sir? All right. Have a good day. Court's going to check. Ma'am, if you can't keep the child quiet, I'm going to have to ask that you take the child out. It's distracting for people. 22 TRD 8204, 22 TRD 8341, Both captions state versus Elmer Hershberger.
Elmer.
Afternoon, Mr. Hershberger. Mr. Hershberger, you've been here twice on buggy lights cases. November 29th of last year, November 25th of last year. Both times pled no contest, both times found guilty. Court assessed a $50 fine on the first offense, $100 on the second. You've never made a payment on your fines or costs. We had a fines and costs hearing on January 12th already. Despite that, the magistrate going through that process, there still have been no payments. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Hershberger?
No.
Do you have the ability to do so?
I think also my religious.
I understand you have a religious objection to the fines, but are you financially able to pay them?
Yes.
And you just are choosing not to? Would that be fair? All right. I'm going to find the defendant's failed to pay his fines and costs, and he does have the ability to do so, and he's simply refusing to do so. Court's going to set a hearing on the issue of execution of judgment, or imposition of judgment, approximately 30 days. Mrs. Miller?
Set that for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 1:15 p.m.
1:15 p.m. on May 16th, Mr. Hershberger. You will need to be here. You will have an opportunity to present any financial information you want to present at the time if your financial circumstance changes. You have the right to be here, the right to present evidence on your finances. You have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing if you wish. My intention, if your fines are still not paid by May 16th, is to issue a judgment in both cases in favor of the city for the amount of unpaid fines and costs. That could then result in a lien being placed on any real estate that you may own or any real estate you may acquire at some later point. It would not be my desire to do that, but I think that's going to be the next step in these cases. If you pay your fines before then, I won't do it. That includes right up until 1:15 on the 16th of May. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing community work service instead of payment, that is acceptable to the court. If you want to give that some thought, Mr. Crossman's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program. If you'd like to satisfy your fines and costs through work service, I will permit that. You sign up for the work service program before the next hearing, and there won't be a judgment. Do you have any questions? All right, thank you. Have a good night. Mr. Crossman, 22 CRD 7647, State versus Levi Hershberger. Good afternoon, Mr. Hershberger. Mr. Hershberger, you were here back in October of 2022, charged with not having a flashing yellow light on a horse-drawn vehicle. You played no contest, court found you guilty, assessed a $50 fine plus court costs. There have been no payments on the fines and costs. Court had a fines and costs hearing in January. That did not result in payment. So here we are today. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Hershberger?
No.
Do you have the ability to do so, sir? Do you have the ability to pay your fines?
I think sometimes they don't understand that.
Okay. Well, I don't know how else to ask it. Some people don't pay their fines because they can't. They don't have a job. They don't have any money. They don't have any assets. They don't have any income. So they can't pay their fines. Some people don't pay their fines because they just don't want to. Some people will refuse to pay their fines for other reasons, right? Like maybe a religious reason. Right. But I guess let me ask it this way. Could you pay your fines if you wanted to? Do you have assets or income that you could use to pay your fines? Yes? All right. Who's going to find the defendant has the ability to pay his fines based on his own admission and is refusing to do so? Based on that finding, we're going to have a hearing, Mr. Hershberger, on imposition of judgment for the unpaid fines and costs, about 30 days.
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 1 p.m.
1 o'clock on the 22nd of May, we're going to have a hearing on the issuance of a judgment. If your fines and costs are not paid in full by then, it's my intention to order a judgment, give a judgment to the city for the unpaid fines and costs so that they can place that as a lien on real estate. If your fines and costs are paid in full before that hearing, I will not do that. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing some community work service, you're welcome to do that. And if you get signed up for that program before the next hearing, I will not render the judgment or place the lien. Mr. Croftsman's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program. If you get in touch with him, he'd be happy to assist you. Now, as far as the hearing on the judgment, you have rights at that hearing. You have the right to be present at all times, to present evidence on your financial circumstance. You would have the right to be represented by an attorney if you wish. You understand all that?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions at all, Mr. Hershberger? Any questions?
Yeah.
All right, sir, we'll see you back here on May 22nd for the hearing on judgment. (22 TRD 7652, 22 TRD 7554), both caption C versus Harvey J. Hostetler. Good afternoon, Mr. Hostetler. Mr. Hostetler, you were been here a couple times on buggy-like cases. October 26, 2022, and October 28, 2022. Both times pled no contest, both times found guilty. Court imposed small fines on both cases. Never been a payment. Court had a fines and cost hearing April 26th, or January 26th. Still no payments. You going to pay your fines, Mr. Hostetler? I'd be happy to read your letter. Mr. Croftsman, you want to get that for me? Mr. Hostetler, would you like me to read this out loud?
It's up to you. I don't mind.
To whom it may concern, I am writing this concerning my case 22 TRD 7554, 22 TRD 7652. The reason I did not pay my fine is for religious reasons. The Ten Commandments verses, it says we must honor thy father and thy mother. My dad is 81 years old, and remember 60 plus years ago they had a similar case, and the elders thought it too worldly. And we still feel the same way. 2 Thessalonians 2:15 says, "Therefore, brethren, stand fast, and hold the traditions which ye have been taught, whether by word or by epistle." And 2 Thessalonians 3:6 says, "Now we command you, brethren, in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, that ye withdraw yourselves from every brother that walketh disorderly, and not after the tradition which he received from us." My conscience would not allow me to, and there's a space, the government has so graciously provided religious freedom in the past, and I ask kindly that it will be extended in the future. Thank you sincerely for your consideration in this matter. Sincerely, Levi J. Hostetler. And then it's accompanied by a letter from the bishops, which the court has read many times. Mr. Hostetler, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds like what you're telling me is you're refusing to pay your fines because you believe that 4513.114B1 violates your constitutional rights under the First Amendment. Would that be right?
Yes.
And I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm not saying it does either. All right? There's a legitimate issue in these cases, but you've not raised it. You've come in and pled no contest. You've not filed motions to dismiss. You've not challenged the constitutionality of this statute. You came in and pled no contest, which required the court to find you guilty. And now, it's like you want to plead no contest. You don't want to fight the charge. You don't want to raise the constitutional issues. But then you refuse to pay your fines. And I guess you want me to ignore that based on a constitutional argument you didn't raise. And I can't do that. I have to, as I'm sure you understand, do my job, whether I find it pleasant or not. If you have a constitutional objection to this statute, you should challenge the constitutionality of it. That's not the same thing as just refusing to comply with it, refusing to pay the court's sanction. There are ways to challenge the constitutionality of a statute. And certainly, people in the Amish community have done that in the past on multiple occasions. So I understand your position. My question, though, remains, can you pay your fines? I understand you're refusing to, but do you have the ability to do so? Could you pay your fines if you didn't object to them?
If I wouldn't care about religious reasons, I couldn't.
All right. Well, I appreciate your honesty. The court is going to make a finding that the defendant has the financial ability to pay his fines and is simply refusing to do so based on a religious objection. The court's going to set both cases for hearing on issuance of judgment.
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 1:15 p.m.
1:15 p.m. on May 22nd. Mr. Hostetler, I'm going to have a hearing in both these cases to decide whether or not it's appropriate to issue a judgment for the unpaid fines and costs on behalf of the city. If I issue that judgment, then that can be used to place a lien on any real estate that you may own now or in the future. It's certainly not my desire to do that, but I don't really see where the court has any alternative. Do you have any other ideas, Mr. Hostetler, on how the court should deal with this?
No.
At that hearing on the imposition of judgment, Mr. Hostetler, you have rights. You have the right to be here. You have the right to present any financial information you want to present about your ability to pay the fines and costs. You have the right to be represented by an attorney If you continue to have questions about your rights or any constitutional issues you may still want to raise, I would suggest you speak with counsel about that. Any questions at all? All right, we'll see you back here on the 22nd, 1:15 for hearing on judgment for fines and crimes. Twenty-two TRD 7950 State versus Levi Hostetler.
No, no middle initial. Is there an initial step?
No, not that I have. I have a Levi J, but this is not Levi J. Afternoon, Mr. Hostetler. Mr. Hostetler, you were here back on November the 9th of last year, charged with not having a flashing yellow light on a horse-drawn vehicle. Pled no contest, court found you guilty, assessed a $50 fine. There've been no payments on that fine. The court had a fines and costs hearing on January 26th to try and figure out why you weren't paying your fines if you had the ability to do so. There's still been no payments. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Hostetler?
No, at this point,
Are you ever going to pay them?
not that I know of.
Do you have the, could you pay them? Do you have income from which you could pay your fines?
Yeah,
You just choose not to.
yeah, for this reason.
I understand, and I appreciate your honesty. Court's going to find the defendant has failed to pay his fines and that he has the ability to do so. Doesn't leave me a lot of choice, Mr. Hostetler. If you had to choose between paying your fines and going to jail, which would you choose?
Going to jail.
That's what I figured. The court does not have the ability to give you that option in this case because this offense of not having the light on your buggy is not a jailable offense. So I can't put you in jail for not paying your fines. I'm not saying I would, but if it were available to me, I might. But that's not an option I have. I do have the option of reducing your fines and costs to a judgment on behalf of the city of Ashland. And I'm going to do that in approximately 30 days, unless there's some reason not to. Mrs. Lilly, can I get a hearing on judgment?
Set that for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m. on the 16th, Mr. Hostetler, you'll need to be here. At that hearing, if your fines and costs are still not paid, I'm probably going to order that a judgment be issued on behalf of the city of Ashland for your unpaid fines and costs. That can then be used to place a lien on any real estate that you may own, either now or in the future. It's my sincere hope that that won't be necessary, but if your fines and costs are not paid, that's probably going to be the result. Now, if you would like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing some community work service, the court would accept that. If you're interested in doing that, you can contact Mr. Fulmer. He runs the work service program. You sign up for the work service program before the hearing on May 16th, and there won't be a judgment. You have rights at that hearing. You have the right, obviously, to be here. In fact, you're required to be here. You have the right to present evidence about your ability to pay your fines if something changes. And you have the right to be represented by a lawyer. Do you understand those rights? All right. We'll see you back here on the 16th of May if your fines aren't paid. Good luck.
All right, yeah.
Levi J. Hostetler. Afternoon, Mr. Hostetler.
Good afternoon.
Court's going to call 22 TRD 7830, 22 TRD 8027, both captured in State versus Levi J. Hostetler, who's present. Mr. Hostetler, you've been here a couple of times on charges related to not having yellow flashing lights on a horse-drawn vehicle. First time was November 15th of last year, and then, well, actually there were two on the same day, that being November 15, 2022. Cases were disposed of on November 22nd. Court imposed fines in each case. There's not been any payments on the fines. Court conducted a fines and cost hearing on January 26th, but there still have been no payments on the fines, which brings us to today. And I guess I'm just going to ask you, Mr. Hostetler, are you going to pay your fines?
I'm religiously opposed to it as long as nothing different is worked out. Traditionally, as I understand, people have gone, our ancestors have gone to court, and if it was something religiously opposed, they were also opposed to paying the fines. Yes, I understand. In order to change that, I also understand it would be take a unanimous vote, church council vote. It's not saying it couldn't change, I don't know that. But as matters stand at this point, I don't see my way clear of paying.
Okay.
I apologize.
I'm not suggesting, Mr. Hostetler, that you have anything to apologize for. And I understand that you're acting out of conscience, right? And I believe you.
Yes.
I understand that. My job's not always a lot of fun. And sometimes I have to do things that I don't want to do. And always, I have to follow the law. Always.
Yeah, I understand.
And you, the way you feel about the higher authority that you feel bound to follow is kind of the way I feel about the law. So, that brings us to this impasse. It sounds like what you're telling me is that based on your faith, you don't feel that you can pay the fine.
Correct.
Do you have the financial ability to pay the fine?
Yes.
Court's going to find the defendant has the financial ability to pay the fine, is refusing to do so for religious reasons. I'm going to ask you what I asked the young man ahead of you, Mr. Hostetler. If you had to choose between going to jail and paying your fines, what would you choose?
Could you ask me something a little more simple?
That's pretty simple, isn't it? If that was your choice.
I would choose to go to jail because that we could do without breaking faith with the church.
I understand
For that
that.
reason only.
I understand it, and you're an honest man. I'm trying to be honest with you as well.
I'm trying to be.
If I had that chance, if I had the ability to let you go to jail instead of paying the $50, I would probably do it. However, the law doesn't permit me to do that because these are not jailable offenses. These are minor misdemeanors.
Understood.
So the statute that says in Ohio we can let people, most people don't view it as a positive, going to jail instead of paying their fines. Most people don't view that as a positive. I know that probably everyone in this room would prefer that. But the issue is, I can't, under the statute, have you sit out your fines in jail on a non-jailable offense. It's not permitted under the Constitution, the way I read it. And I think the Supreme Court has been very clear that we are not to do that. So I don't have that option. I can offer you the opportunity to satisfy your fines and costs through community work service. I don't know if that would be more acceptable to you or not, but I would ask you to think about it. Mr. Crossman is going to give you a card for Mr. Fulmer, who runs the work service program. If you'd like to satisfy your fines and costs through community service, the court would be fine with that. Otherwise, I'm going to set a hearing on judgment, imposition of judgment, in approximately 30 days.
So I got for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 1:45 p.m.
16th?
Yes, Your Honor.
May 16th at 1:45, Mr. Hostetler, I am going to reluctantly have a hearing on whether or not I should issue a judgment to the city of Ashland for your unpaid fines and costs. If I choose to do that, the city can then use that to establish a lien on any real estate that you may have. I really don't want to do that. But I will, if that's where we're at. You'll have rights at that hearing. You'll have the right to present any evidence you want to present about your ability to pay your fines. You also have the right to be represented by an attorney. Any questions?
No, sir.
Please stop at the clerk before you go and pick up a copy of that order.
Thank you for always being respectful and good job.
All right. You have a good day.
Thank you.
Court's going to call 22 TRD 721 and 22 TRD 7719, both captioned State versus Levi Layman. Mr. Crossman? Afternoon, Mr. Layman. Court's going to call 23 TRD 721, 22 TRD 7719, both captioned State versus Levi Layman, who's president. Mr. Layman, you've been here a couple times for violations of the new state statute that requires a flashing yellow light on all horse-drawn vehicles. First one was back in October of last year, court assessed a $50 fine. Then there was a second offense, January 26th of this year. The court assessed a $100 fine on the second offense. Looks like there was a fines and costs hearing on January 26th. You get the second ticket on your way to court?
Yes.
All right. There have been no payments on the fines in either case, and the court did conduct a fines and costs hearing back in January. Mr. Layman, I'm just going to ask you, are you going to pay your fines?
Not religious beliefs, I don't have plans for it.
All right. Are you able to pay your fines? Do you have the financial ability?
Yes, for financial,
You're just choosing not to.
for religious beliefs.
Court's going to find the defendant's failed to pay his fines, and based on his own statements that he has the ability to do so and chooses not to. Mr. Layman, if you had a choice between going to jail and paying your fines, what would you choose?
What's that?
If you had to choose, if you had the choice between going to jail and paying your fines, which would you choose?
I would choose jail because it's a religious belief.
Right. Well, I've said this to some others who've been here. You know, I do not have that ability. I'm sure most of the defendants here today, if not all, would choose jail. The Supreme Court's made it very clear that people cannot be incarcerated for non-payment of fines on minor misdemeanors, because it's not a jailable offense. So I know it's out there in the community, and I know I've had a lot of Amish folks come in and say they want to go to jail and set out their fines. I can't. It's not something I can do. I do have the ability to allow you to do some community work service to satisfy your fines and costs, and I would hope that you would consider that. Mr. Crosland's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program. If you're interested in satisfying your fines through community service, that would be acceptable to the court. Meanwhile, I'm going to set a hearing on judgment in approximately 30 days.
Set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 1:45 p.m.
15:05?
Yes, sir.
1:45. May 15th, Mr. Layman, 1:45. I'm going to have a hearing on whether or not I should order a judgment on behalf of the city of Ashland for your unpaid fines and costs. You have rights at that hearing. Obviously, your appearance is required. You can present any financial information you want to present about your living expenses or your income. If the fines and costs are not paid in full by that date, most likely the court's going to order a judgment. City can then use that to place a lien on any real estate that you might own or any real estate you might own in the future to secure payment of the fines and costs. It's my hope that won't be necessary. If your fines are paid before then, that won't happen. If they're not, but you sign up for the work service program, I still won't do the judgment. If neither of those things happen by May 15th, court's probably going to order a judgment. I think we've reached an impasse, and if that's your position, you're just not going to pay your fines, then this is really the only effective option the court has. Please stop out and see the clerk. They will give you a copy of the court's order. We'll see you back here on May 15th. I think it's Malin. Sir, how do you pronounce your first name?
Malin.
It is Malin? Yeah. All right. Court's going to call 22 TRD 8819 State versus Malin Layman, who's present. Mr. Layman, you were in this court back in December of last year on a charge of not having a flashing yellow light on a horse-drawn vehicle on a public road. Pled no contest. Court found you guilty. Assessed a $50 fine. This fine wasn't paid. We had a fines and cost hearing back in January. Fine has still not been paid, which caused me to set this hearing today. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Layman?
No, religious.
Are you able to pay your fine? Financially?
Oh, I probably could financially, but I'm basically on the Bible.
I understand. So what you're telling me is you could pay your fine, you just choose not to for religious beliefs. Would that be fair? Based on those statements, the court's going to find the defendant has the ability to pay, is refusing to do so. Mr. Layman, I don't think there's a lot of point in continuing to set hearings on fines and costs. I don't see where anything's going to change. You're not going to pay your fines no matter how many hearings I have. And I'm just going to have to do what I have to do. So I'm going to set a hearing on the execution of judgment in approximately 30 days.
Set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 10:30 a.m.
What's going to happen at that hearing, Mr. Layman, is I'm going to conduct a hearing on whether or not there's any reason not to just reduce your fines and costs to a judgment. You'll have rights at that hearing. You'll have the right to present any information you want to present about your financial circumstance, your living expenses, your income. And you have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing if you wish. But most likely, if the fines are still unpaid, at that point, I'm going to issue a judgment, a civil judgment, to the city for your fines and costs. And then that judgment could be used to place a lien on any real estate that you might own either now or in the future to secure the payment of fines. At any point, up until that hearing begins, if you pay your fines and costs, there'll be no judgment, there'll be no lien. If you would like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing community work services to the payment, I don't know if that's more acceptable to you based on your faith or not, but if it is, it would be acceptable to the court. Mr. Krausman is going to give you a card from Mr. Fulmer. He runs the work service program. And if you're interested in satisfying your fines and costs that way instead of paying them, get a hold of Mr. Fulmer and he'll help you. Please stop and see the clerk before you go pick up a copy of the court's order. Do you have any questions? All right, Mr. Layman, you have a good day, sir. Court's going to call 22 TRD 7368, State versus Elon Mast. Afternoon, Mr. Mast. Mr. Mast, you were in this court back in October of 2022, charged with not having proper lighting on a horse-drawn vehicle, pled no contest, court found you guilty, assessed a fine of $50. Fine has not been paid. Court conducted a fines and costs hearing in January. Fine is still unpaid, which brings us to today. Are you going to pay your fine, Mr. Mast?
No,
Do you have the financial ability to pay your fine?
I would, because of religious reasons I'm not.
I understand that, but would it be accurate to say that you can pay your fines, but you don't feel religiously that you should?
Yes.
Court's going to find the defendant has the ability to pay his fines and refusing to do so. Mrs. Lilly, can we set this for hearing on issuance of judgment?
Set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 10:45 a.m.
Mr. Mast, I don't see any point in having any more hearings on fines and costs. I think it's pretty clear that you're not going to pay your fines. So I'm going to set this for hearing on issuance of judgment. If the fines are not paid by May 15th at 10:45, unless there's some other reason not to, the court's going to issue a judgment for the outstanding fines and costs to the city, and then that judgment can be used to place a lien on any real estate that you might own now or in the future. If you pay your fines before that hearing, then there will not be a judgment, obviously. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing some community service, that would be acceptable to the court. If that's something you're interested in, you can contact Mr. Fulmer. Mr. Kraus is going to give you his card. If you enroll in the work service program before the hearing in May, then I will cancel the hearing. Any questions at all?
No.
Now, you have rights at that hearing, Mr. Mast. If you want to present evidence about your financial circumstance and ability to pay, you have the right to bring an attorney with you if you want. But unless the fines are paid, there's probably going to be a judgment. Any questions at all?
No.
All right, please see the clerk before you go. Pick a copy of that order up. Have a good day, Mr. Mast.
Yeah.
22 TRD 7567, State versus Andy Miller.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, you were in this court back on October 26th of last year, charged with not having a flashing yellow light on a horse-drawn vehicle on a public road. You pled no contest, court found you guilty, assessed a fine of $50. Doesn't look like there's ever been a payment on that fine. And we had a hearing in January on the issuance of the fine, but there still has not been a payment. Are you going to pay your fine, Mr. Miller?
I'm flat on it.
You're not paying on it? Do you have the financial ability to pay your fine?
Yeah, but he can come my way.
You're just refusing to do so? All right, Mr. Miller, I appreciate your honesty. I'm going to find, based on Mr. Miller's statements, that he has the ability to pay his fines and costs and is refusing to do so. What do you think I should do about that, Mr. Miller?
Make your own decision.
Mr. Miller, can I get a hearing on issuance of judgment, please, in about 30 days?
Yes, Your Honor. We can set that for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 2 p.m.
Mr. Miller, I'm going to have a hearing on May 16th at 2 o'clock to decide whether or not I should order a judgment for your unpaid fines and costs. If I do that, that can then be taken and placed as a lien on any real estate that you may own or any real estate you may acquire in the future. That would secure the payment of fines and costs. If your fines and costs are paid before that hearing, I will not be making that order. Now, you have rights at that hearing. You can present evidence if you want to about your financial circumstance. You have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing. If you would like to do some community work service to satisfy your fines instead of facing the judgment lien, that would be acceptable to the court. Mr. Crossman is going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program. If you have any interest in satisfying your fines through work service, get a hold of Mr. Fulmer. Do you have any questions at all? Stop and see the clerk before you go, please, and pick up a copy of the court service. Have a good day. Court's going to call 22 TRD 8354 statement of Enos Miller. You can come on out, Mr. Miller. Mr. Miller, you were in this court back in December, charged with having or failing to have a flashing yellow light on a horse-drawn vehicle. Pled no contest, court found you guilty, assessed a fine. There's been no payments on the fine. We had a fines and costs hearing in January, still no payments on the fine. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Miller?
No.
Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
Yeah, but it's for religious reasons.
All right. I'm going to make the finding based on Mr. Miller's statements that he has the ability to pay and is refusing to do so. Mr. Miller, what do you think I should do about that?
I don't know.
If you had to choose between paying a fine and going to jail, which would you choose?
No, what's that?
If you had to choose between paying your fines and going to jail, which would you choose?
I guess going to jail.
Well, that's not really an option for us, Mr. Miller. That would make it pretty easy. But Supreme Court's made it very clear that the court cannot permit you to set out your fines in jail on a minor misdemeanor because it's not a jailable offense. So I do not have that option available to me in this case. I'm going to have a hearing on the issuance of a judgment based on unpaid fines and costs because I don't really see any other effective thing to do.
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 10 a.m.
10 o'clock on the 22nd of May, the court's going to conduct a hearing on whether or not I should give a judgment to the city of Ashland for the unpaid fines and costs. If I do that, that can then be used to place a lien on any real estate that you may own now or may own in the future. It's not something that I particularly want to do, Mr. Miller, but I don't see where the court really has much other choice. I don't think I can have 100 hearings. It's not going to change anything. So you pay your fines before the next hearing. There won't be a judgment. If you'd like to satisfy your fines by doing some community work service, that would be great. If you sign up for that work service program before the next hearing, there won't be a judgment or a lien. But if nothing's done with your fines by May 22nd, we're probably going to issue a judgment. Any questions at all? No. Now you have rights at that next hearing. You have the right to be here, the right to present evidence about your financial circumstance, and the right to be represented by an attorney. Please stop and see the clerk before you go and pick up a copy of the court. Have a good day, Mr. Miller. Mr. Craftsman, can I have an Elon Schwartz-Truber?
Levi Schwartz-Truber.
Mr. Swartzentruber, you were last in this court, well, initially in this court back on October the 18th of 2022, entered a plea of no contest to a buggy lights charge. Court found you guilty based on the no contest plea, assessed a fine of $50. There's never been a payment on the fine. We had a fines and cost hearing in January. There still has been no payment on the fines, and we're now 6 months down the road. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Swartzentruber?
No.
Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
Yes.
So why are you not paying your fines?
Because of religious reasons.
You just refusing to do so for religious reasons? All right. Court appreciates your honesty, Mr. Swartzentruber. It doesn't leave me a whole lot of alternatives. I'm going to set a hearing on issuance of a judgment order in about 30 days.
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 1:45 p.m.
1:45 p.m. on May 22nd, we are going to have a hearing on whether or not the court should issue a judgment for your unpaid fines and costs. If I do that, it would most likely be used to place a lien on any real estate that you may own and any real estate you may acquire in the future. If your fines and costs get paid before that hearing, Mr. Swartzentruber, then I will not be doing that. And if you would like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing some community work service, if that, and I don't know if that's acceptable on your faith or not, but if it is, and you'd like to do that, it's certainly acceptable to the court. Mr. Crossman's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs a work service program. If you want to explore that option, you're welcome to contact him. At the judgment hearing in May, you have the right to present financial information if you want regarding your ability to pay. You also have the right to be represented by an attorney and the right to be present at all times during the hearing. Understand those essential rights? Please stop and see the clerk, Mr. Swartzentruber. They'll give you a copy of the court's order that has your next hearing date in it. Mr. Carson, can I have Henry Swartzentruber? And there's two of them. I'll take the one that's,
There's,
approximately 25 years old.
okay, we'll try it that way, sir. The younger Henry Swartzentruber.
I'm not sure that that's correct. I think the other one would be. Yeah. 1703. Mr. Swartzentruber, what's your birthday? What's your birthday?
June 99.
Alright. Court's gonna call 22 TRD 8069 State versus Henry Swartzentruber, who's present. Mr. Swartzentruber, you were found guilty in this court back in November of last year of not having a flashing yellow light on a horse-drawn vehicle. Court assessed a fine of $50. Fine was not paid. You set a fines and cost hearing in January. Fine's still not been paid. And here we are now in May. You're going to pay your fines, Mr. Swartzentruber? Do you have the financial ability to pay your fine? Do you know what I mean by that? Do you have income that you could use to pay your fines?
Yeah, I can't.
Okay, what?
I can't, but it's against my religion.
Okay, so you could pay your fines. It's just against your religion to do it. Thank you. Court's going to find that the defendant has failed to pay his fines and costs, that he has the financial ability to do so, and he's refusing to do so. I'm going to set this for hearing on the issuance of a judgment in approximately 30 days. Mrs. Owen?
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.
May 22nd at 1:30, we're going to have a hearing, Mr. Swartzentruber, on whether or not I should issue a judgment to the city for your unpaid fines and costs. Now, you'll have rights at that hearing. You need to be here. You'll have the right to present evidence regarding your financial circumstance and ability to pay. You have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing if you'd like. But if your fines and costs are not paid by that date and there's not some just cause for not doing so, I'm probably going to order a judgment for the fines and costs, which can then be used to place a lien on any real estate that you might own or any real estate you might acquire at a later date. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing some community service, that's acceptable to the court. If that's something you want to think about, Mr. Crossman's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program, and I'm sure he'd be happy to hear from you if you want to explore that option. Do you have any questions at all? Please see the clerk. They'll give you a copy of the court's order and a reminder of your next court appearance. The other Henry Swartzentruber, please. Can you put this in? Afternoon, Mr. Swartzentruber. Mr. Swartzentruber, you were in this court back in December of last year for charged with failing to have proper lighting on a horse-drawn vehicle. You entered a no contest plea, court found you guilty, assessed a fine of $50 plus the cost. There's never been a payment on it. We had a fines and costs hearing on January 26th. There's still been no payment. So I set it out for hearing today to try and figure out what to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Swartzentruber?
Well, for religious reason, paying is no option.
Okay. So no, you're not going to pay your fines? Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
I would, but for religious reasons, I
So you can pay your fines, you're choosing not to because of a religious principle. Is that right? All right. We're going to find the defendant has the ability to pay and is refusing to do so. I'm not trying to give you a hard time here, Mr. Swartzentruber, but I guess I'm interested if perhaps you have any thoughts about how the court should best deal with this circumstance. What do you think I should do?
I don't know.
I bet a lot of people in Ashland County think I should put you in jail.
Probably.
Yeah. And you probably like that, wouldn't you? Because then there's no pressure on you, and you're keeping with your faith, and you don't pay your fines. Unfortunately, it's not legally an option in this case, because that might be an easy way. I'm going to set this for hearing on imposition of judgment in approximately 30 days.
Set that for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 1 p.m.
1 o'clock on May 23rd, Mr. Swartzentruber, I'm going to have one final hearing in this case, and that will be to decide whether or not I should issue a judgment to the city of Ashland for unpaid fines and costs. If I do that, which I probably will, unless there's some reason not to, that judgment could then be used to place a lien on any real estate that you might owe, or might own, or might acquire in the future. Obviously, it would accumulate interest until it was paid. Now, I would prefer not to do that. I would really prefer not to be doing any of this. But I have to do what I have to do to try and collect the fines and costs, which I'm sure you understand.
Yeah.
If you pay your fines and costs before that May 23rd hearing, there won't be a judgment, and this case will be finished. You have rights at that hearing. You have the right to be here, the right to present evidence on your financial circumstance. You have the right to be represented by an attorney if you wish. If you'd like to do some community service to satisfy your fines and costs, that would be acceptable to the court. If that's something you want to do, you need to contact Mr. Fulmer. Mr. Crossland's going to give you his card. If you sign up for the work service program before the next hearing, I'll cancel the hearing and I'll give you a chance to satisfy your fines by doing work service. Do you have any questions at all?
Yeah, what are our constitution rights?
Well, you have a lot of constitutional rights. Is there a particular one that you're interested in?
Well,
Here's the situation, Mr. Swartzentruber. I'm not trying to give you a hard time. I'm running out of voice and I'm getting tired. I can't give you legal advice. Okay, I'm not here as your attorney. The court has to be impartial. If you have questions about your constitutional rights as they apply to this court's process, then I would encourage you to talk to an attorney about that. And if you want to, even at this point, if you want to challenge the constitutionality of this statute, there may still be time for you to do that. But again, that's something you're probably going to need to talk to a lawyer about. The court can't really help you with that, all right? Now, I know what you're asking me, and yes, there is a way that if you feel a statute as applied to you violates your constitutional rights, then you have the right, as like any other American, to challenge the constitutionality of that statute. But that's not been done in your case. You just came in and pled no contest. And that resulted in the court finding you guilty. And now there's a fine and you're refusing to pay it. Could you still challenge the constitutionality of that statute before I put a judgment on your real estate? Probably should talk to a lawyer about that. Do you have any questions that I can actually answer?
no.
All right. Stop and see the clerk before you go, and pick up a copy of the court's order. It'll have you next Tuesday in. Court's going to call 22 TRD 7577 State versus Jacob Swartzentruber.
Okay.
I should change that, please. We're going to call 22 TRD 7577 State versus Jacob Swartzentruber. That's you, sir? Yes?
Yes.
Mr. Swartzentruber, you were here back in October, pled no contest and found to have proper lighting on a horse-drawn vehicle. Court found you guilty based on the no contest plea. Assessed a fine of $25. The fine has never been paid. We had a fines and cost hearing in January to try and figure out why the fine wasn't being paid. It still hasn't been paid. And that brings us to today. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Schwartz?
Yeah.
No. Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
Good, but it's against our religion.
So you could pay your fines, you just choose not to? Would that be fair?
Yeah.
Okay. Court's going to find Mr. Swartzentruber has the ability to pay his fines by his own admission and is choosing not to. Let's set this for hearing on issuance of judgment.
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 10:15 a.m.
It's going to be your next court appearance, Mr. Swartzentruber, 10:15 in the morning on May 22nd. At that point, unless there's some reason not to, the court's probably going to order a judgment to the city of Ashland for your unpaid fines and court costs. That judgment can then be used to place a lien on any real estate that you might own or any real estate you might acquire in the future. It would accumulate interest over time until paid. Now, if you don't want that to happen, you can pay your fines. If your fines aren't paid by May 22nd, there's probably going to be a judgment. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing work service instead of paying them, that's okay with me. Mr. Crossman's going to give you Mr. Former's card. He runs the work service program. If you want to explore that option, you can call me. You can come see Mr. Former. I think he's in right now. If you want to go over and talk to him. You will have rights at the hearing on the 22nd. You'll have the right to present evidence regarding your financial circumstance, and also you have the right to be represented by an attorney. You understand all that?
Could you say it again?
Say what again?
What you just said?
That you have the right to be represented by an attorney at the judgment hearing, and also the right to present evidence about your financial circumstance. Look.
He's on his son, he probably don't get it quite all.
Okay.
He's talking about that you have an option for an attorney, right?
Sure.
But you don't want to do that. So he probably can't pick up everything that you're saying.
I understand, I get that. But it's important to me that you understand.
Right. Yeah.
And if I can help you understand, I will. What's going to happen next, since you haven't paid your fines, is there's not a lot that I can really do about that. But one thing that I can do is do what's called a judgment. And that's just a court order saying that you owe this money. And that would accumulate, I would get interest on that. It would grow every year until it's paid. And we would send that downtown to the clerk of courts, and they would file that as a judgment lien. So if you owned real estate, that judgment would attach to it. So if you ever try to sell that property or borrow against it, or if you pass away and it goes through your estate, any sort of transfer on that real estate, that judgment would have to be paid, plus all of its interest over time. And that judgment could also attach to any real estate you get in the future, even if you don't own any now. So that's the next step. That's what the court's going to do in May, if I have to. Now, if you pay your fines before then, I won't be doing that. And if you don't feel that in keeping in good conscience with your faith that you can pay your fines, if you'd like to do some community service, I'll accept that instead. It's an option you have. Does that help you understand it?
Yeah.
All right, good. Stop and see the clerk, Mr. Swartzentruber. I'll give you a copy of that order. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. How about 22 TRD 7972, 23 TRD 202, both captioned State versus Benjamin Lee. Afternoon, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, you've been in this court twice on buggy rights cases. The first one was back in November of last year, and the second one was January of this year. In both cases, you pled no contest, court found you guilty. I assessed a $50 fine on the first case, $100 fine on the second one. There's never been any payments on those fines. We had a fines and costs hearing in January. Fines are still not paid, which brings us to today, for me to decide what I'm going to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Weaver? Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
Good, but for religious reasons.
All right. Court's going to find that the defendant has the ability to pay his fines and is refusing to do so. Any thoughts about what the court should do about this, Mr. Weaver? The simple truth, Mr. Weaver, is that under the law, I don't really have a lot of options. When people don't pay their fines on minor misdemeanors, I can put warrant blocks on their driver's licenses. I'm guessing you don't have one. I can send these fines out to collections. That's not going to do any good in your circumstance. I do not have the ability to have you sit out your fines in jail because it's not a jailable offense. So that leaves me with a judgment, which means I could give the city a piece of paper that says you owe the fines and costs from these cases, and that will accumulate interest over time until it's paid. And they can take that judgment and file it as a lien against any real estate that you might own, where it will stay until it's paid. And I guess that's our next step. So can we get this set for hearing on judgment?
Set that for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 1:15 p.m.
May 23rd, Mr. Weaver, at 1:15, we're going to have a hearing on whether or not the court should issue a judgment for unpaid fines and costs. You have the rights at that hearing. You have the right to present evidence about your financial circumstance. You have the right to be represented by an attorney. But unless there's some good cause not to issue a judgment, I'm probably going to do it on that day. Do you have any questions at all? Stop out and see the clerk if you would, please. Pick up copies of the order. It'll have your next court date in it. Good luck, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Ashland, can I have a Henry Weaver, please?
Henry Weaver.
afternoon, Mr. Weaver. Mr. Weaver, you were in this court back in November of 2022, pled no contest to a violation of 4513.141, which is the buggy light statute. Court assessed a fine of $50 plus court costs. There's never been a payment on the fines. We set a fines and cost hearing for January 26th. Still been no payments on the fines, which brings us to today for me to decide what I'm going to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Weaver?
No.
Do you have the financial ability to do so, sir?
Yes.
Appreciate your honesty, Mr. Weaver. We're going to find the defendant has the ability to pay and is refusing to do so. I've asked a lot of folks ahead of you, Mr. Weaver, what they thought I should do about this. I have not gotten not one single suggestion from any of them. You seem like perhaps you're a little more experienced and wiser than some of the others. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think I should do about this? Well, I got a man who says I'm not going to pay my fines for reasons of conscience. What do you think I should do about that?
You know, it's religion reason.
I understand.
I have no suggestion really.
Well, the law provides the court with very few options. And even fewer of those make any sense in your case. The one that does is that I can give the city of Ashland a judgment for the outstanding fines and costs. And I'm going to have a hearing on the issuance of judgment in approximately 30 days.
We'll set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m. on the 15th. That's going to be the last hearing probably in this case, Mr. Weaver. And unless there's some good reason, I'm going to order a judgment on that day to the city for your unpaid fines and costs, which they can then use to perfect a lien on any real estate that you may own. And that lien will stay there until your fines and costs are paid. Now, I really would prefer not to do that. I just don't want to, for one thing, and another, it's an awful lot of work for my staff and for other people. But I don't know what else to do. I can't just ignore the non-payment of the fines. I have to do something. So that's the option the court's going to go with. If your fines are paid in full before then, I won't do it. And if you would like, I don't know how you feel about the idea of not paying the fines but satisfying them through community service. If that's something you would be interested in, that's an option in this case. And if you were to sign up for the work service program before the 15th of May, I'll cancel the hearing. Mr. Carlson's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program. Now, at the hearing on the judgment, obviously you have rights. You have the right to be here, the right to present evidence on your financial circumstance, and also the right to be represented by an attorney. If you have any questions about your legal rights with respect to the judgment, I'd encourage you to speak with an attorney. Do you have any questions at all?
Can't think of any.
All right, Mr. Weaver. You have a good day. Let's see. Abraham Yoder.
Abraham. I'll take at least an hour. So no, probably Monday.
Good afternoon, Mr. Yoder. Mr. Yoder, you were in this court back on November 15th of last year. Pled no contest to a violation of Ohio's new buggy light statute. You were found guilty, assessed a fine of $50. The fine and the court costs remain unpaid. We had a fines and cost hearing for January 26th. There's still been no payment, which is the reason we're here today. I need to decide what I'm going to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Yoder?
Well, for religious reasons, we don't.
No, okay. Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
I would,
Okay. You're just choosing not to because of your faith?
because
That'd
of
be fair.
religious, yeah.
All right, Mr. Yoder, the court's going to find the defendant has the ability to pay his fines and is choosing not to. Mr. Yoder, I'm going to have one more hearing in this case, and that will be for the purpose of deciding whether or not there's good cause for not issuing a judgment. One of the things the court can do under these circumstances is give the city a judgment for the unpaid fines and costs, which they can then use to create a lien on any real estate that you might own. The judgment will gather interest until paid. I'm going to do that in approximately 30 days to give you one last opportunity to satisfy your fines.
Set that for Monday, May 15th, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.
Now, unless there's some reason not to, I'm going to issue a judgment on May 15th, 1:30 for the unpaid fines and costs. You have rights with respect to that hearing, Mr. Yoder. You can present evidence about your financial circumstance and ability to pay. You have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing. You want to bring a lawyer with you? Have any questions at all? If you have any interest in satisfying your fines through work service as opposed to paying them, Mr. Yoder, I will be acceptable to the court. And Mr. Krause is going to give you Mr. Former's card. He runs a work service program. If you'd like to satisfy your fines and costs that way, certainly fine with me. Please stop and see the clerk. They'll give you notice of your next court appearance.
Thank you.
Levi Yoder?
One more time on that one. Levi Yoder. Levi Yoder.
Should be that one. Sorry. Good afternoon, Mr. Yoder. You can come on up to the podium there, sir. Mr. Yoder, you were in this court back on January 29th of last year. You pled no contest to a violation of Ohio's new statute that requires a flashing yellow light on horse-drawn vehicles, regardless of the time of day. The court found you guilty, assessed a fine of $50. There's not been any payments on the fines or costs. We had a fines and costs hearing in January, still no payment, which brings us to today, for me to decide what I'm going to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Yoder?
No,
Do you have the financial ability to do so?
I would, but it's against my religion to use that flashing lights. I don't pay because of that.
Okay. Court's going to find the defendant has the ability to pay fines and he's refusing to do so. Mr. Yoder, I have to decide what I'm going to do with this case. Do you have any suggestions for me about what you think I should do?
I don't know.
I'm going to set a hearing on issuance of judgment, approximately 30 days.
Set that for Tuesday, May 16th, 2023 at 2:15 p.m.
Court's going to conduct one final hearing in this case, Mr. Yoder. That will be on May 16th at 2:15. Now, the purpose of that hearing will be for me to decide if there's any reason why I should not just order a judgment for your unpaid fines and costs. If I order that judgment, it will effectively become a lien. It can be recorded in the county offices and becomes a lien on any real estate that you might own and any real estate you might acquire later. Obviously, it would draw interest over time until paid. You have the right at that hearing to present any evidence you want to present about your financial circumstance, or if there's any just cause for not ordering a judgment. You have the right to be represented by an attorney if you want to bring an attorney with you. You understand those essential rights?
Yeah.
You have any questions at all?
No.
If you pay your fines before the hearing, there won't be a judgment. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing some work service, that is acceptable to the court. Mr. Crossman's going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. He runs the work service program. If you'd like to handle it that way, stop over and see him.
Okay.
Please see the clerk before you go.
Okay.
Levi Yoder?
Levi Yoder.
It's going to call 22 TRD 8201, State versus Levi Yoder. Mr. Yoder, you were in this court back in November last year, pled no contest to a buggy light violation, took time to guilty, assessed a $50 fine. Doesn't look like there's ever been a payment on the fines. We set a hearing on fines and costs in January, still no payment. Which brings us to today, when I just basically have to decide what I'm going to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Yoder?
Religious.
Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
I would have if it wasn't for the religious.
All right, Mr. Yoder. Court appreciates your honesty. I'm going to find, based on defendant's statements, that he has the ability to pay and he's just refusing to do so. Let's set this for hearing on the issuance of judgment in approximately 30 days.
Set that for Monday, May 22nd, 2023 at 2:00 p.m.
2 o'clock on the 22nd of May, Mr. Yoder, I'm going to have a hearing. And if there's no good cause for not doing so, I'm going to order a judgment on behalf of the city for the amount of your unpaid fines and costs plus interest, which can then be placed as a lien upon any real estate that you might own and may acquire later. If your fines are paid in full before then, I won't do that. If you would like to satisfy your fines by doing some community service instead of paying them, that's acceptable to the court. Mr. Crossman is going to give you Mr. Fulmer's card. If you're interested in doing a community work service, stop over and see Mr. Fulmer and I'll help you. Please see the clerk before you go and pick up a copy of your order. It will also give you your next court appearance. Now, you have the right to present evidence at that hearing on the issuance of the judgment. If you'd like, Mr. Yoder, you also have the right to be represented by an attorney at that hearing. Do you have any questions, sir? No? Have a good day. Andy's look, please. I know who it is. Yeah. No, I believe it. All right, court's gonna call, 22 TRD 8314, 22 TRD 7750, 22 TRD 7656. All caption state versus Andy Zook is present. Mr. Zook, you've got, 3 different cases here, all involving, alleged violations of the new horse-drawn vehicle lighting statute in Ohio. One from November of 22, one from January, both 2 from November of 2022, and then one from October of 2022. Court did a $50 fine on the first one, $100 fine on the second one, and $150 fine on the third one. None of those fines have been paid. We had a fines and costs hearing in January to try and figure out why. Still no payments, which brings us to today, when the court has to decide what I'm going to do with this. You go pay your fines, Mr. Zook?
For religious reasons, I refuse to pay.
All right. Do you have the financial ability to pay them?
Yes.
All right, Mr. Zook, I'm going to find that you have the ability to pay and that you're refusing to do so. Let's set these for a hearing and issuance of judgment.
Set that for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 1:30 p.m.
1:30 p.m. on the 23rd day of May, Mr. Zook, unless there's some good cause not to do so, I'm going to reduce your fines and costs to judgment. And that means that they can then be taken by the city and the county and placed as a lien against any real estate that you might own now or in the future. That lien will continue to garner interest until paid in full. Now, you have rights at that judgment hearing. You have a right to be here, right to present evidence on your financial ability to pay. You also have the right to be represented by an attorney. If you have any other questions about possible legal remedies, I encourage you to speak with counsel. Do you have any questions for me?
No.
I don't know if this is interesting to you or not, Mr. Zook, but there is an option of satisfying fines and costs by doing community service without paying them, which the court would give to anybody on a minor misdemeanor. If you would like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing community service instead of paying them, talk to Mr. Fulmer and he'll help you with that. Otherwise, we'll see you back here on the 23rd of May. Please see the clerk before you go. Daniel Zook. Correct. Yeah. You can come on up to the podium, Mr. Zook. Mr. Zook, you were in this court back in November of 2022. You had no contest to a violation of Ohio's new buggy light statute. The court found you guilty, assessed a $50 fine. Fine's never been paid. We set a hearing in January to try and determine why your fines are not paid. They're still unpaid. Which brings us to today. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Zook?
I'm not planning on it.
Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
You mean like could do it financially? I could, but I don't plan to pay for it.
I understand. But you have the ability to pay, you just choose not to. Would that be fair?
You mean if I could?
Yeah, I mean, Could you?
I'm not planning on it.
I understand that. But if it were not for your religious objection to the statute, could you pay your fines?
It's through my religious objection.
All right. Court's going to find defendant has the ability to pay the fines and is choosing not to. Mr. Zook, do you have any thoughts about what the court should do about this?
Well, my beliefs are based on our forefathers, and that's what I'm basing on myself.
I understand, but here's the I guess quandary that puts me in. I understand why you have a religious objection to this statute. Okay, at least I believe I do. Now, but you haven't challenged the statute. You came in and pled no contest to the statute, which results in you being found guilty. So then the court has to impose a fine. Now you tell me you won't pay your fines because you have a religious objection to the statute. Then why not challenge the statute? Why plead no contest to a statute that you object to religiously and then come in and refuse to pay the fines? I doubt you have a religious objection to paying fines. Your religious objection is to the statute. So why not challenge the statute? Why is nobody challenging the statute?
My beliefs are based on our forefathers.
I understand that. I just don't understand why, if that's the case, and I don't mean any disrespect, I know your beliefs are sincere. I'm not suggesting to the contrary. But there's been no challenging of the statute, which puts the court in the position I'm in. I'm going to set this for hearing on imposition of judgment.
So that for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 1:45 p.m.
There's going to be one more hearing, Mr. Zook, and at that hearing, unless there's some good cause not to, I'm going to issue a judgment to the city of Ashland for your unpaid fines and costs plus interest. They will then use that to put a lien on any real estate that you might owe. The lien will stay there until the judgment's paid in full with interest. You pay your judgment before that next hearing, there won't be a judgment. If you'd like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing work service instead of paying them, fine with me. Mr. Crossman's going to give you the Community Work Service Coordinator's card. You're welcome to see him before you go if you'd like. Please stop and see the clerk and pick up a copy of the judgment order with the hearing notice in it. You do have rights at that hearing on judgment. That includes the right to present evidence on your financial circumstance and ability to pay, and also the right to be represented by a lawyer. If you want to bring a lawyer with you, that's great. Do you have any questions?
No.
All right, good luck, Mr. Zook. William Zook.
Okay, am I done?
You are done, sir. Just see the clerk before you go. You come on out, Mr. Zook. Mr. Zook, you were in this court back in October. Entered a no contest plea to a violation of 4513.114, which is the new statute requiring a yellow flashing light on horse-drawn vehicles. The court found you guilty based on your plea. Assessed a fine of $50 because it was a first offense. Fine's never been paid. We had a fines and costs hearing back in January. Fine's still not been paid. Which brings me to today, and I have to decide what I'm going to do with this. Are you going to pay your fines, Mr. Zook?
No.
Do you have the financial ability to pay your fines?
Yes.
Court's going to find pursuant to 2947.14 of the code that the defendant has the ability to pay and is refusing. Any thoughts about what you think the court should do about that, Mr. Zook?
Pray.
Any other thoughts? It's the best advice I've gotten all day, Mr. Zook. I'm going to set this for hearing on judgment, approximately 30 days.
Set that for Tuesday, May 23rd, 2023 at 2 p.m.
2 o'clock on the 23rd, unless there's some reason not to, I'm going to order a judgment for outstanding fines and costs. City will be able to use that to place a lien on any real estate that you might own or any real estate you might acquire later. That lien will continue to accumulate interest until it's paid. If your fines and costs are paid before the hearing, there will not be a judgment, will not be a lien. If you'd like to satisfy your fines and costs by doing work service, it's fine with the court. Mr. Crossman's going to give you the work service coordinator's card. He's waiting to meet with anyone that would like to consider that option. Do you have any questions?
No.
You have rights at that hearing, Mr. Zook, right to be present, right to present evidence about your financial circumstance, right to be represented by an attorney. Please stop and see the clerk before you go, pick up a copy of the order, and it has your hearing notice in it. Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
I think that's it. Take us off.
Yes,